Hello, my name is Robin LaCroix, and I'm a dietitian from the White River Junction VA Medical Center. Here today to make the silken chocolate mousse. This recipe is very, very tasty. Sometimes people are a little nervous about it because it does use tofu, and that's a food that some people are just getting more comfortable with. It's a great starter recipe for adopting tofu into your meals because really it tastes quite wonderful. So today we're going to start with 1 block of soft tofu. It's really important to get soft tofu. That's going to give you that smooth, silky texture. So this is sold usually in the ethnic food section in a box. It's shelf stable. You can also buy it in the produce section of the grocery store in the refrigerator. But either way, a soft block of tofu. So this box, you just kind of pop it up, and then we'll use scissors to cut this tab off. You may have a little liquid that kind of comes up, so just be mindful of that. All right, so in our food processor, or you could use a good blender if you have one, we're going to put all of this tofu. Should probably use a spoon here. It's okay if there's a little bit of water in it, it's fine. If you buy the block in the refrigerator section, sometimes there's quite a bit of excess water, and just try your best to kind of scoop the tofu out and not use too much of the water, but either way, it's going to be fine. All right, so we get all the tofu in there. And we're just going to start by blending it on its own to get a nice smooth texture. My food processor seems extra loud today. All right, so you'll see we have a nice smooth texture there. Okay, now we're going to make the chocolate to add to it. So using a microwave-safe bowl, you are going to add 3/4 cup of chocolate chips. And the recipe calls for mini chocolate chips. I find they're maybe a little bit easier to melt, but you could use regular chocolate chips. If you prefer a really dark chocolate, use a dark chocolate chip. If you're kind of in the middle, use a semi-sweet, or you could use a milk chocolate if you really prefer kind of that flavor. So we're going to put the chocolate chips in a bowl. We're going to add 3 tablespoons of water to the regular chocolate chips. And we're going to add our unsweetened cocoa powder. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Sometimes I cut down to 2, especially if my kids are going to eat it because it tends to be quite intensely chocolatey. And 2 seems to be a little more moderate for kids. So go with what feels best to you depending on how much you love that dark chocolate flavor. So I'm just going to mix up here the chocolate chips and the cocoa powder and the water. You'll notice it still stays kind of dry and powdery looking. That's perfectly fine. We just want it to look like this when it goes in the microwave. So to melt chocolate, we want to go kind of in sections. So I'm going to put it in for 30 seconds, give it a stir, put it in for another 30 seconds, give it a stir until once you start stirring it, it gets nice and smooth. So after my first 30 seconds, you'll notice I'm already getting some melting here. I'm going to give this a little bit of a stir. And if I keep stirring and all of my chunks start melting, it might not need much more time. I'm still noticing some chunks here. I think I'm going to put mine back in for about 15 seconds. What we want to be careful of is not actually, the more I stir, they might just melt on their own. I want to be careful not to overheat our chocolate, or it can kind of clump up in a funny way. I'm actually quite happy with how this looks. So it is nice and smooth. I could put it in for 10 more seconds or so, but I think as long as I just let it sit, those additional chunks of chocolate chip are just going to keep melting. Okay, so we've got our melted chocolate. We'll bring back our smooth tofu. So we are going to add our chocolate to the tofu right in the blender food processor. I'm going to get it all in there. Okay. To this, we are going to add, it calls for 2 to 3 tablespoons of powdered sugar. 2 will give you a mildly sweet mousse, and 3 will give you a little bit more sweet. I find, again, my kids are going to like it a little bit more sweet, so I might do about 2.5 or so, but you have that option. You could always start with 2 and add a little bit more at the end if you prefer. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm out of it right now, so I'm just going to leave it out. Either way, again, it's a nice flavoring, but it's not a necessary one for the recipe. And then we have 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. All right, so we'll get our top back on, and we're going to blend till this is nice and smooth, about 1 to 2 minutes. So you'll notice just after about 10 seconds, we already have this nice, smooth chocolate consistency. So I'm going to come back and blend for 1 to 2 minutes on my own, and I'll be okay. So I blended for about 1.5 minutes. I have this nice, smooth texture. It won't be, it'll be a little on the runnier side, not runny, but not as thick as a pudding right now, right? So once we put it in the fridge, it'll thicken up. So oftentimes you can kind of know your food processor. I find it's a little easier to take the centerpiece out before I start pouring. I like to use these little mason jars because then you can just put the tops on them and pop them in the fridge from there. But you can use whatever you enjoy or whatever works for you. You could even refrigerate it in a larger container and then take it out as you need or as you want. So this is delicious kind of on its own as a mousse, or it's also really nice with some fresh berries on it. It's a delicious sweet chocolatey flavor. Here, I'll give you a taste so I can tell you what flavors come through. I taste the cinnamon, I taste the chocolate. There's a lovely amount of sweetness. I am a tofu eater, but I really don't taste tofu in this recipe. So I really encourage you to give this a try. It's a delicious way to incorporate some plant-based proteins into your meals. Hope you enjoy.